Welcome to the Bad Roman Podcast. On this show, we talk with veterans, community leaders, Christians and non-Christians as we explore the entanglement of Christians with the state. The Bad Roman Project was created out of the firm belief that as Christians, we are called to follow Christ, not the state. Here is your host, Craig Hargis.
Hey folks, talking about Christian anarchism on the show is one thing. Meeting someone out in the wild who subscribes to Christian anarchy is another thing. Meeting that person while training jiu-jitsu is a whole other thing. And all of that wrapped up into one conversation is very exciting for me. Today, Tyler Rose is on the show, and we're going to talk about all of these things.
Let's go. Yeah. Left, right, left, right, left. We got our marching orders, man. Left, right. Would you rather serve God than serve Caesar, you feel me? Right. I'm just trying to live what he said. I'm just trying to live what he said. I ain't scared. I will take one to the head. Go ahead. So it's safe to say that I'm bad.
Tyler, how you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good, man. How about you?
Doing great. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I love talking to people about jiu-jitsu. I'm very bad at it, but I like to pick people's brain about it. People have been doing it longer than me, especially like you. You're one of the coaches at the Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu gym that I train at. And we got into this conversation while stretching one day, and I had one of my Bad Roman t-shirts on, and you said, "What is that?" And I started explaining it to you. And
right.
Then we started talking about it, and then we started training. I was like, I want to talk to this guy more about it, get him on the show and talk to him about Christian anarchy and how he got to that point and what got him involved with jiu-jitsu as well. But before we do all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, just whatever you want folks to know about you, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Well, my name is Tyler Rhodes. Grew up in a Pentecostal church. Still go to a Pentecostal church today. I think I was like 15 when I started getting into politics, maybe 14. I got into watching Glenn Beck on Fox News. and he was like, dude, he was like my hero for a while, man. I really love his stuff, and all of his stuff about like the founders and stuff. I really related to that, and the Revolutionary War was something that I really adhered to. And there was a thing called the 3 Percenters. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
a little bit.
It's basically I mean, people hijack the name and take it for something else. Sort of how, Republican today is a full-on liberal, but essentially a 3 Percenter is somebody who would take up arms against the British forces. And I just really love the Revolutionary War and really love the rebellion, because I saw it as providence. I saw it as a God-inspired rebellion. And that kind of led me down the path of libertarianism that Glenn Beck originally started me on. And then eventually I learned that even libertarianism has its limits, because any government that exists will eventually become tyrannical. So the only answer is no government.
Right. And then, I did the same. I moved into the third party circles. I was going to vote libertarian in 2016. I don't know if I've told you this part about me, but I wasn't voting for Donald Trump. I kind of woke me up to there's something bad going on here. And then when the libertarians were putting up Gary Johnson, I'm like, I'm not voting for this guy either. So I went like extreme third party, voted Darrell Castle in the Constitution Party, because at the time I was studying the United States Constitution, and he was the only candidate on the ballot that was actually talking about the Constitution. None of these other clowns were. None of them were. They don't care about that supposed oath that they take. They don't care about it. But, and I'm not saying he would either, but he was actually speaking to it. But after that was the last time I ever voted. And you're right. I think if we talk about the founders, and I've talked to some folks about this in the past, our understanding of libertarianism, if you think about the founders, they were probably libertarians.
Right.
So what they started has now turned into Joe Biden. So I think you're right. It's best to not have a government, because it's not getting any better. The government itself is not getting any better. I think that, and as Christians, doing some study on the early church and stuff, I can't. There's no way I could involve myself with it, and that's just where I stand on it. Just for me myself, I can't put myself into that position, reading stuff from Jesus and then the early church writings and stuff. I can't. The government itself is tyrannical. Jesus said, "It will not be so among you." You don't do that. You don't lord over one another, and that's what people are doing when you're putting people in power over each other. I don't think people take that to heart the way they should.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you what verse you was just quoting.
I can't remember. It's Jesus said, "You see how the Gentiles lord over one another. There will not be so among you." I don't know exactly what verse it is or where it's at, but if you just type in that scripture, you'll find it where it's at in the Bible. It's not just that. I mean, you read what Jesus would talk about on the Sermon on the Mount when he was talking on the Sermon on the Mount, just the stuff he was saying and what happens when you put people in power. To me, it's an outsource of sin because these folks end up stealing from everybody. They're stealing our money out of our paychecks, and they're using this money that they've stolen to go murder people across the world.
Right.
I just don't know how a Christian, if they thought about it seriously, how they could entangle themselves with something so evil.
Yeah.
Because it's evil. And I've talked about this on the show too, back, Paul, when he was talking about in Romans 13, when he says governing authorities, what they understood that to mean at that time, they understood that to mean demons. So if Christians understand that, why do you want to be a part of it? Jesus told Satan, "No, I'm not. I have no interest in the kingdoms of this world." Well, if it's good enough for Jesus, it should be for every Christian as well. But unfortunately, it's not. The vast majority of Christians still believe that they can fix the government, whether libertarian, Republican, Democrat, or whatever. I mean, it's just not happening. It's time to walk away. It's time to walk away from this garbage.
It's become too powerful to reel it back in.
Yeah, and every empire eventually falls.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with the term collapsitarian, but I fall neatly into that camp now because it's going to happen. And we were doing a Zoom call last night, some folks from the discussion group. And I said, I'm pretty sure I might see it in my lifetime. I think it's imminent. Maybe not. I don't know, but it's going to happen at some point. And when it does, it's going to be a little chaotic. But at the same time, you see when people, like when there's a disaster, all these tornadoes we've had in this area, in the area recently, people come together and help one another. And to think that you need a government to help other people is just foolish to me.
Right. Yeah. One of my friends from church, he was telling a story. He lives up there where the tornadoes had come through. It jumped right over his house. And he said as soon as the tornadoes ripped through, he went outside and there was trees in the street, and he got on his tractor and went out to start moving the trees out of the road. And before he could even get out there was other men with tractors clearing the stuff out of the road. And to me, that was just such a sign of like self-reliance, and which is probably my biggest reasoning for being an anarchist, and is the ability to rely on yourself. If you rely on other people, which I'm not saying, you don't need help every now and then, or that's what friends are for, but you don't need a sovereign government to dictate and help you out with things that you could do yourself or your friends could do if you just, showed some effort. But the nanny state thing is, kind of the opposite of everything that's in me, like the self-reliance is an important thing to me. Well,
sure. And, and there's folks out there that can't help themselves. And that's where the church should come in.
Right. Exactly.
That's where the church should come in and help these folks that can't help themselves. Don't outsource it to the state, because the state doesn't care about these people.
Right, exactly.
It's a lot of what we saw with the early church too. They worked on the fringes of society for the marginalized, the people that were they couldn't take care of themselves, the people that were hungry.
And that's what tithes and offering was for back then. There was a widow tithe, there was a synagogue. The tithes and offering back then was to help those people. It was welfare, but it was a church welfare, which also meant that it was consensual.
Right. It was exactly. That's a key word right there, is consensual. And there's nothing that the state does with us that's consensual. Now, I've explained this to folks too. I said, you can pay as much taxes as you want. Have a ball.
Right.
But if you agree to it, nobody asked me for permission to take money out of my check.
Right.
Nobody did. So it's theft.
Yeah.
And if you don't pay that taxes, if you don't file your taxes, what happens? They lock you up in a cage. Tell me that's not slavery and I'll eat your hat.
Right. If you resist a law, the end is always being held at gunpoint and locked in a cage. If you refuse to be locked in the cage, then you're killed. Yep. On the spot.
Yeah, they will murder you.
Right. So you're saying that like any law that exists, I always like help talking to my nephews about statism and talking to my nephews about like self-reliance and stuff. If someone says like, there's like an old the old timers, they'll say stuff like, well, there ought to be some kind of law against that.
Yeah.
I'm like, hold up now. What you're really saying is that if this person doesn't agree to what you specifically want, that they should die.
Yeah.
Because that's because ultimately, if they disagree with it and it's a law, and then the law enforcement tries to enforce this law and they refuse that enforcement, they refuse to be handcuffed and arrested, then they're going to get killed over parking on the wrong side of the street or parking in front of a fire hydrant or something.
Yeah, and I heard somebody say this one time too. If it's not worth somebody dying over, don't call the cops.
Right.
Because there's always a chance that they could. There was a story it's been a few years back in Fort Worth, Texas. This lady she had just got done playing video games with her nephew or something, and she'd taken a nap on the couch, and her glass sliding door was open, or was a little open, and somebody called the cops for a welfare check. She heard them in her backyard. She got up to go see what was going on. They thought she had a weapon and they killed her, shot her in her own home. That's tragedy. And people, that was one of that last things from me let go was my, trusting in the cops and stuff. But when people talk to me about like an anarchist society, they say, well, we don't hate the cops like you. I said, I don't hate them. And I'm not saying that security would not be a thing in a society, but it would be agreed upon among the society. And these folks would be beholden to the society, the community, and not to a crooked politician. I interviewed Jeffrey Hand last week on his book on COVID-19, and he calls them policy enforcers. And I said, that's the best description because that's all they're doing.
Right.
Even if it's a bad law, they still do it.
Right.
But, not to get too far in the weeds on that, but you're right. I've heard that so much. There ought to be a law. And I've said it just joking around, like it should be a law against me having to go work on a Saturday afternoon when it's 70 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Just something silly like that. But
so I've tried to find this Tolkien quote, J.R.R. Tolkien, that I've tried to find it, and it might have been something he said. When I originally read it, it was in one of his letters to his son, Christopher. But I've tried to search for it, and I can't find it again. So it might have been something that the internet just made up and then put his picture on, Regardless, the quote itself is still legitimate. It said something to the effect of that good cops cannot exist because the job of being a cop itself is inherently evil.
Yeah.
Because governing other men is inherently evil. And I agree with that 1,000%. I believe that people who help others who can't help themselves, like you were saying before, like strong men who could protect widows or could protect children or single moms or even other weaker men, people like that should exist. But the law enforcement that we have today is legitimately a gang.
Exactly. 100%. I don't know if you ever listened to Tupac, and he's one of my favorites, and I love listening to some of his old interviews. And he said, we learned how to be gangsters from the government.
Dang.
He said the National Guard is a gang.
That's pretty good.
The government is a gang. So I call them the mafia all the time. But, and you were talking about the founders too. Speaking of the police, it's in the Constitution. There will not be a standing army. That's exactly what we have is a standing army. If you see how well armed these police officers are these days, come on. And then the people want to pass gun laws. And listen, and I told you this in messaging too. I'm a pacifist. I have a pistol. I don't carry it because I don't want. There's always that chance of using it. But I like to target practice from time to time. But like that shooting in Nashville recently, people are wanting gun laws. They want people to turn in their weapons. Which, if it's voluntary, if they want to turn in their stuff, fine. But as long as the government exists to think that we need to lay down our weapons,
right? That's
silly,
right?
Have you ever read a history book? And I'm not advocating for armed revolution, none of that stuff. A lot of people go to that route. I'm thinking we just need to start working through Jesus, doing what Jesus told us to. A lot of peaceful resistance to the government has been proven to be very effective, like Martin Luther King and, with what he did back in the civil rights days,
Right.
He was adamant about not putting hands on the state.
Yeah.
And they were getting abused out there on the street. But some of them fought back, and who could blame them? You got to think about at some point, oh, I'm dying. It's like that guy that just got recently murdered here in Memphis from the cops.
Yeah.
He realized what was fixing to happen, and he took off. And I kept seeing this garbage online, and it pisses me off too. When I see people like, well, if he just wouldn't have resisted, he'd still be alive. No, he knew what they were fixing to do to him. That's why he was trying to save his own life.
That's another thing that really bothers me is the stop resisting movement. Like these people who's, dude, I'm going to resist. Like, no. Yeah. If a man walks up to you without a badge and a gun, if a man walks up to you and says, get on the ground, I'm swinging immediately. Like, no man is going to talk to me like that. Like, respectfully, no. I grew up in Fraser, which is like, you know.
I've heard about Fraser. I've never been to Fraser, but I've heard about Fraser.
Yeah, that's North Memphis is my home. So
that's a rough area, man.
Dude, if you got sideways talking to somebody, dude, that you're swinging on the spot. There's no like, let's talk this out. If you start disrespecting somebody, it's immediately, you know, you're in it. And it baffles me how cops, there's a few people in this. Jordan Peterson actually said part of this was inspired. Jordan Peterson said women can get away with saying whatever they want to men because there's no threat of violence. There's no like underlying threat of violence. But I extend that to like police as well, because a cop can disrespect a man or do whatever they want to really, and you can't do anything back. And that's another thing that's inherently wrong with law enforcement. If a man walks up, like I was out playing basketball at this park. The park closes at 10 p.m., right? Public park, government paid for park. The lights paid for by tax dollars. So I get in my car and I'm sitting in my car. It's like 10:05. I get in my car to leave, right? Cranking my car and I'm just sitting down, drinking some water. And this cop pulls up behind me and he pulls up behind me so that I can't leave. And he gets out and he hits my window and he says, roll your window down. And just that alone is like, can you imagine if some other man without a badge and without a gun came up to your window and demanded that you rolled your window down? Like, dude, you would get some people, like a lot of people in this world would punch you in the face for that. You know, it's baffling to me how their sense of respect for other men has gone out the window.
Well, there's none there, you know, and there's something about that badge and that weapon that gives them some kind of, I don't know, I call it little man syndrome, I guess, but this
safety complex.
What I mentioned before, since we're talking about it, and I told Jeffrey this when I interviewed him last week, that was the last thing for me to let go of was the cop thing. Okay. But when we saw George Floyd murdered right there on video, I was like, something's wrong here, man. I can't defend this. Because I would have been one of those guys saying, well, if he'd just wouldn't resist, he'd still be alive. That back in the day, I would say garbage like that. Then when we saw the lockdowns and how they were abusing people and shutting people's businesses down and enforcing these mandates that weren't even laws, that was it for me. I was like, no, I can't do this. I'm not supporting this garbage anymore. That was it for me. And now listen, I've got friends who are cops. I know them outside of their uniform, and they're good people. But somebody told me this one time before, too, on the show. They said, but you don't know how they're behaving when they're at work.
Right.
And we don't know. Because if they're enforcing some kind of bad law, you know, and I know they take an oath to the United States Constitution, but they got their fingers crossed because they don't follow that either. They probably don't know what the damn thing says, first of all. You know, and it's the same thing. Well, just following orders. No. You're a human being and you're treating other human beings like shit. Stop doing it. Stop treating them like that.
Yeah, I had a guy that I was working with, and I thought he was a cool dude, you know, when I was just hanging out with him. And then one day he came over and he was like, yeah, man, he was a cop and at night worked construction during the day. He said, yeah, man, I had this guy last night because he knew I did jiu-jitsu. And he was like, I had him in a Kimura. I put his hand on the back of his head. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, you think that I'm happy about, like, you think that I think that that's cool that you dislocated somebody's shoulder? Dude probably was just like walking down. Of course, I have a bias. I'm automatically assuming that the dude is innocent. But it's crazy to me how the dude was bragging about hurting somebody. And I thought he was a cool dude. You know, I thought he was like a buddy of mine. And then I was like, you know, it opened my eyes to what you were saying about you don't know how they are with the badge. Because, you know, when they don't have it, they could be like a normal person. And then once they put it on, they're like completely different.
It changes them, you know, and I'm a little careful sometimes about talking about it, you know, out with folks because people are still sensitive to it. I know people who were married to cops and stuff, and I'm friends with them on Facebook and this and that. But every once in a while, like that, just like this most recent thing in Memphis where they killed that dude, I was pretty outspoken about it. I said, it's time to stop supporting this stuff. We got to stop supporting it, because the more you put your faith and trust into these folks, the more authority you're giving them, the worse it gets. Walk away from it and open your eyes to what's going on with these people, because they're not. I posted something earlier on Facebook today. It was, somebody had a tattoo. It was a cross, and it had the blue line across it, and it said basically, when you, I can't remember exactly what it said, but basically when you don't understand who killed Jesus and you don't understand history. And this guy commented, he goes, well, no, that was the military that killed Jesus. And I said, well, the military was, and cops were one and the same then. And then today, I don't see any difference. To me, like I said, the police officers right around today are militarized. I was talking to this guy at work about it, when it was after the Nashville shooting, and he goes, well, they have to, and he's from West Memphis. He lives in West Memphis, right? And he, in Arkansas, and he said, well, they have to have all those weapons because people run around killing each other. I said, so we need those weapons too. I said, I don't have them. I don't own an AR-15 but to say that you want to take it out of their hands because the cops, he goes, well, I don't know, man. I grew up on the streets. I know what's going on the streets. You don't. I said, you're right. I did not grow up on the streets like you did. But to say that you want to disarm these folks so the cops, I'm not down with that. I'm not down with that at all. I think it's a very dangerous road to go down to start disarming people and just giving all the weapons to the government.
That goes back to my self-reliance point, that I don't depend on another man to secure my family. I don't depend on another man to take care of it. I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but it makes me sick to think that some people in this world depend on other men to help them in times of like learn to fight, learn to use a weapon, if something goes down, if somebody's in your backyard and your first reaction is call another man rather than handle it yourself, dude, you gotta alpha up a little bit. I'm not trying to sound like a meathead, but
right. No, I know.
Rely on yourself, there's a reason God gave you that God made you a man. Be a man.
Well, I told you this too in messaging. That's the one thing that really attracted me to jiu-jitsu. And at this point, I'm still really bad at it. I've learned a couple of things along the way. I actually got somebody to tap out in class the other day. I was pretty proud of that. But
hey, that's what I'm talking about. Do you know what it was?
I can't remember I'm still learning the terminology, but one of them taught me this move. Basically, once you get in side control, somehow you get their arm over their side and you get them in a kind of a choke.
Okay.
To where they can't get. I can't remember what it's called, man. But I tried it. I got it to work.
Paper cutter? Maybe.
Man, I don't know. I'm so bad with the terminology as well. But I got it to work. Now, I'm not saying I'll ever get it to work again. Because
you will. Just keep training. You'll get it.
Well, I haven't been in a couple of weeks because my shoulder's wrecked right now. And I hadn't even been going to lift weights. And the last couple of days I've been in the gym lifting weights. I went Thursday night after work, and then Friday evening I went and lifted weights. And my shoulder, man, and I was, Cheyenne at the Breakfast Club class, I was talking about, we were stretching one morning. I said, man, I could hurt myself sleeping. I wake up when I sleep on my side, my shoulder's just jacked up. I don't know what I've done to it. And he said it might be in my neck. He said, and he had something similar, and he would he went to a chiropractor and they fixed him up. And he hadn't any more issues. So I just probably need to check into that, maybe see if they can do something for me, or otherwise, because I don't want to talk to my doctor about it, because I'm afraid she's going to be like, we're going to need to do surgery. I don't want to hear that.
I love Cheyenne. He's such a good dude. And
he is a real good dude, man. I tell you what, that's one thing I've loved so much about jiu-jitsu too, is just the community, and the people really want to see you succeed. Now, you're competing with one another, but at the same time, the encouragement behind it, I noticed that instantly when I first started. And I was so impressed by that. And that's why I wanted to talk to you some about that too, because I know folks like I said, in the anarchist communities that train jiu-jitsu. And it's kind of interesting how those two worlds kind of come together. And I'm wondering, you talk about self-reliance. You've been talking about this whole show about self-reliance. And I think you mentioned that messaging too. That's what attracted you to jiu-jitsu. You're still a purple belt, right? Or have you advanced beyond it? Okay.
Not
So
purple belt.
How long have you been training?
I started training in March of 2018.
5 years. So what was it that, other than the self-reliance, was there something else that attracted you to it? Because I think you mentioned this too when we first started talking about it in class that day. Or maybe somebody asked you when we were stretching. You said Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And I kept I listen to Rogan a lot, and I hear him talking about it, but I always kind of dismissed it. And I got a friend, his name's Steve. You'll probably recognize his name from the discussion group, but he said something. He posted stuff about jiu-jitsu, and I commented on his post one morning. I got home from work, and I was like, man, I just feel like I'm too old for that. He goes, how old are you? And I told him, and he goes, man, I started when I was 53, and I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now. And then he sent me a YouTube video of this 72-year-old man that's a brown belt now. And this guy's crawling all over people. So I was like, all right, no more excuses. That's what I got on. I was like, jiu-jitsu near me on Google. And there was one here in Oakland, but it was more karate, I think. And then the next one was the one we're at now at the Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu gym.
Yeah. I started at 23, and I've always had the regret that I didn't start sooner. I've always wished that I started as a kid, and hopefully I could have been a world champion by now or something. But also a quote from Joe Rogan is, yeah, but you did.
Right.
You didn't. So put that behind you and just do what you can now. So yeah, I started at 23 back in 2018. I think Joe Rogan was probably 80% of my influence. I started looking up other stuff and researching it, and Henry Gracie and his brother Hedon Gracie from Gracie University. Those two guys, I really liked them, and I really Henry's such a good salesman, so he sold jiu-jitsu to me, and I started doing the Gracie University online stuff. And I went to a tournament, never having been to a gym, the Arkansas State Championships as a white belt. And I got to the gold medal match where I was disqualified for reaping, which is I didn't even know what it was because I'd never been to a real gym. But I had just been watching those jiu-jitsu videos online and rolling with my buddies. And I had four or five friends that we would get together and just train on our carpet. And we got some mad carpet birds. But that actually turned into my gym now in Mountain View, which is Brotherhood Jiu-Jitsu. And we're 2 years up and running in Mountain View that we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. But yeah, went to the Arkansas State Championships as a white belt, never having been to a real school, and got the silver medal. It was really cool because it was I've always been naturally athletic, not incredible athlete, like Division I athlete or anything, but I've just been above average, I would say. Also, I consider myself an intellectual. So anybody that's pretty athletic and pretty smart, I think they're just going to love jiu-jitsu. Even the non-athletes, anybody that's good at solving puzzles or good at chess, intellectual people really enjoy jiu-jitsu, especially gi jiu-jitsu. But being the athlete that I was as a teenager, I really enjoyed adding that to it. And then I moved to Memphis March 2018 and joined a gym where I trained under a guy who at the time I think was 8-time black belt world champion. Now he's an 11-time black belt world champion. Got a lot of controversy surrounding that guy, but he was my first jiu-jitsu coach. And then eventually I moved to Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu a few years later, which was last year. And my game was shot up like crazy. Shout out Donnie.
Yeah, man. That's one thing I've noticed about that place is everybody there that's good, they're really good at this.
Right.
And they want to see people like me who are really bad at it get better at it, and there's one guy, he started training, they call it the Breakfast Club, that 5:30 a.m. class. I've been going with that because it works both my work schedule.
Bunch of dogs in there, man. Bunch of really good guys in there.
Dude, this one guy, he's new. He's got the longest legs of anybody I've ever seen, and he's so difficult to roll with.
Are you talking about Mike, bald-headed guy?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's his name.
Tall, blue belt.
Yeah, he's blue belt.
Yeah, he joined Memphis. We rolled an open mat, and he was like, dude, how are you getting so much better? Because we used to train together at another gym, And he was like, how are you getting so much better, so much faster? I was like, man, I just train here every day. And so he switched champs.
That's what he told me. He said, because he was new and we were kind of talking a little bit before we started. And he goes, yeah, he told me where he used to train at. He said, everybody from here is so good. He said, that's why he switched gyms. And it's true. I mean, I feel like a fish out of water in there sometimes. Cause like I said, I'm still learning the terminology and work is finally slowing down a little bit. So it's not going to be so demanding of my time. And I can get back in there. I haven't been in a couple of weeks because of my shoulder. I might wait until Tuesday morning, see how I feel tomorrow, but most likely Tuesday morning, get back in there. But talking about that class itself, dude, and I had never rolled before. Never. I just been to your class, and I go to maybe try to hit a Monday morning, a Monday 11 a.m. class, and just do some, go through some training without ever doing any rolling.
Right.
Well, they do that every day there, regardless. And they got one class, one day. That's all you do is they call it marathon rolls. And you want to talk about a workout, buddy?
Oh yeah.
Holy cow, man! You do that for an hour.
Right.
There's no cardio like that you'll ever find in your life.
There's a popular quote that says, "Ain't no shape like wrestling shape," and which is this. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. Jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo. It's all grappling. Using strength on strength.
Oh, I know I've gotten stronger just by doing that too. Not just lifting weights, but I know I've gotten stronger from it. They do tell me that I'm pretty good at my guard. Like one guy, I can't remember his name. He's a brown belt in that class. He goes, it was no-gi day, one of the no-gi days. He goes, you're white belt, right? I said, yeah, I'm the whitest of the white belts. And he said, and I was on top. And I could see what he was fixing. Well, I didn't know what he was fixing to do, but I knew he was fixing to take over. And I ended up just on my back. He goes, why did you go to your back so quick? He said, aren't you more comfortable on top? I said, well, yeah. And he said, but why did you go to your back so easily like that? I said, because that's what I know how to do is to guard, to defend myself.
Yeah.
And they've told me more than once that it's hard for them to get any kind of submission move on me because of my guard. Because I guess, and that's all I really know right now is my strength. And that's what I try to overpower. And he was joking, but like he's joking the entire time. You probably know what I'm talking about. He's joking the entire time. He goes, he's going to try and strongman me. That's a bad idea. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
and it gets me in trouble more often than not, but I don't know what else to do. Like I know how to get into side control, but once I get into that position, I'm lost. And I don't understand, how they do the points and stuff when you go to competition and stuff. I don't really understand the rules on that either. So trying to figure out, like I said, I got that one submission. Try learning more stuff from side control is what I really need to work on. But the videos that I watch, they said the key thing for a white belt is to just learn how to defend yourself and learn side control. Then everything else you'll just kind of learn along the way. I don't know if you think that's true or not, but
I wouldn't say necessarily learn side control. I would say as a white belt, your goal is to understand when you're safe and when you're not safe. If your elbow goes across your center line, you're probably not safe. If your elbow, anytime your elbows get attached from your body, like anytime your elbows are separated from your ribs,
yeah,
you're probably not in good shape. But that's just a general rule of thumb. Obviously, it doesn't apply all the time. But knowing the positions, knowing when you're safe, and then knowing when to move. A lot of times, guys, like once you start passing, they'll just kind of give up. The more advanced people you'll see, they never stop moving until they get into a position that they want to be in.
It was one of the no-gi days, I think, and we were rolling. It was the last 30 minutes of the class, and I can't remember the guy's name. I'm horrible with names, but if I keep going, I remember some of their names. But like, I was on the bottom, but I kept trying to get my legs wrapped around this guy, and we were just doing circles, like we were just spinning on the mat. And you were talking about like carpet burn when you and your buddies were rolling on the carpet. When that's one thing I noticed immediately was the mat burns that I get on my feet.
Oh yeah.
And I remember like I went the one class and then the next class, like, Brandon in Breakfast Club class too. He said,
yeah.
He said he's the one that kept encouraging me to come. And so he's really been kind of pushing me, but, he said, yeah, it's the first time he's ever rolled. And everybody's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And then the next morning, I said, yeah, I've got all these weird sores on the top of my feet now too. And they said, oh yeah, those will go away. I don't know if your feet just get calloused up enough to where you just don't get sores anymore or not. But
I'm not sure about that. I thought that's still the debate I have with myself, because all the bro science guys are like, yeah, bro, you just get calluses, bro. You're good. But, but I think it's partially due to learning, maybe not learning, but you get mat burn in a spot and you start protecting that spot a little more. And so your body like moves without putting that spot on the mat, maybe. Because I still get mat burn occasionally, but it's not how it was when I first started. So I think you just learn to not get it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like inherently, it's not a conscious thought.
Are you still teaching the Friday morning class?
So I don't teach the Friday morning class anymore, but I'm still teaching the teens class every weeknight. So Monday through Friday, I'm teaching 6 to 7.
Yeah, I was just curious because with work slowing down, I'm sort of trying to get back in there maybe some Friday mornings or even Friday evenings. I know they have like a beginner's class on Friday evening, I think, too.
Yeah.
I went one Friday night not long after I started, and I walked in, and I'm used to being in that one area where we normally train at.
Yeah.
And there were kids everywhere. I'm like, what is it? Am I here at the wrong time? And there were kids everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm not fixing to roll with a bunch of kids. They were tiny kids too. And I'm like, and then Brooks, like, she goes, no, you're going to be back there in that room back there. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I said, I don't care how good these kids are at jiu-jitsu. I'm going to pick them up, throw them across the room because I know I'm stronger than them. And you were talking about you wishing you'd started when you were earlier. I feel the same way. But like you said, Joe Rogan, well, you didn't. Well, anybody my brother's got a couple of kids, and I've told him, I said, get them into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Do it now. And I see kids, more and more kids signing up for jiu-jitsu, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because it's going to teach them discipline. It's going to teach them how to defend themselves. It's going to keep them in shape, and it's going to keep them off the streets. And I think that's so key. I think that's so key. And that's one thing that attracted me to jiu-jitsu is because I was, as a pacifist now, and, people have their own ideas about pacifism. Maybe some people are like, well, you can't be training jiu-jitsu if you're a pacifist. And I'm like, I don't believe that, because jiu-jitsu, what attracted me to it was you're learning how to defend yourself without killing somebody.
Right.
And if that's the go-to is pick up a pistol, and I'm not willing to do that anymore. So but I also understand living in this area that you got to keep your head on a swivel sometimes too. And you got to get to the point where you can defend yourself or others without killing in the process.
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is the only art where, well, maybe not the only art, but it's certainly the most popular and most effective art that's recognized that you can learn this art and not punch people in the face and win a fight. This also relates back to our police discussion we was having, that when I was telling you what I thought that what was important for white belts is learning when you're safe and when you're not safe. I think that's incredibly important for law enforcement. When we were talking about that, I looked this up. It was on it's News Nation now, says that police use of force dropped 37%, and injuries to suspects dropped 44%, and officer injuries dropped 25%, according to Department of Statistics. So not only does jiu-jitsu teach you when you're safe and when you're not safe, but it teaches you, like, for law enforcement purposes, it would teach you how to control someone without hurt. And if a man was to say something slick to me, or, maybe insult me, then I can let it go. I can be like, hey, whatever, have a good day, buddy. If he starts, messing with my family, then that's a different story. But there's this like cliche in jiu-jitsu where it's like, but if your drunk uncle at the Thanksgiving party is like getting a little too loud, you don't want to use like Taekwondo and kick him in the face and break his nose. You don't want to use your boxing to like knock him unconscious and give him brain damage. If you just want to, if like he's putting his hands on people and roughing people up, and you just want to put him to sleep and, him wake up fine a minute later, then you just put him to sleep. No big deal. Like, in my mind, it's so much different than hitting somebody, right? Hitting somebody is like, that's when you want to hurt somebody. You got to reserve that time for punching and kicking for like a time when you really want to hurt somebody. Like if you're in a fight for your life, and if you learn jiu-jitsu, then you are capable of using grappling, of using your body and their body, momentum and leverage, to stop a fight without causing them harm. Like the fight can be over, completely over. They're not awake, or you use like pain compliance, like an arm bar or something, and the fight can be over without ever injuring a person. You know what I mean? I think that's a beautiful part of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I agree. And too, the popularity with jiu-jitsu is growing too.
Yeah, for sure.
And Rogan was talking about something on his show. One of the Gracies, I guess it was in New York. It was like around a subway or something. You may have seen this too, where this guy attacked him, but he didn't know who he was attacking. And this Gracie, I can't remember which one it was, but he got him in this submission, or he choked him out, I guess. Got him just to a point where he made him less mobile, basically. The guy, he was, and Rogan's like, you just don't know these days anymore. If you have this idea of attacking somebody, you don't know what they know.
Yeah. So that was Henzo Gracie.
Okay.
He was Danaher's coach, John Danaher, and John Danaher is Gordon Ryan's coach, which is the grappler on the planet. But Henzo's 56, and like some dude just runs up and assaults him in a subway, and at 56 years old, Henzo is perfectly capable, handling himself. And if he chose, like, that's another thing about jiu-jitsu is you get to choose how the day ends. You get to choose if that person leaves unconscious, if that person doesn't ever walk again, if that person has broken facial you get to choose whether it's a peaceful day or whether it's a very violent day. And that's another thing that I love. It's the confidence in knowing that, like, it's that self-reliance thing. Like, at the end of the day, what happens is in my hands. It's in my control. And I train every day to make sure that somebody's strength or size, which I fight at heavyweight. I weigh like 220. So I'm a pretty big dude anyway. But to know that I'm training every single day to do everything that I can to be as well prepared and well equipped as I possibly can be, so that at the end of the day, if something happens and my family's involved, I get to choose how that day ends.
And I think that's great. I think that's exactly what's so beautiful about just that particular martial art. I mean, I would have never even imagined doing something like this before. But for some reason, it caught my attention, and then starting to understand that, just wanting to be able to defend myself or others without killing people. I was like, okay, this makes sense. And I think I had to call my mom because, and I didn't know this about her, but my mom watches jiu-jitsu. I didn't know that. I didn't know that she enjoys watching the matches and stuff. And I was like, y'all don't think I've gone crazy? She goes, no, I think it's great. She goes, I think it's great. She goes, I love jiu-jitsu. And I didn't know that mom watched jiu-jitsu.
That's crazy. How did she watch it? She just watched it on YouTube or something?
I guess. I honestly don't know. She's never watched it whenever I've been visiting. So I don't know if she's playing on her phone and watching jiu-jitsu matches or not. I don't know. But it was surprising to me. She goes, no, I don't think you're crazy. She goes, I think it's great.
She's been on them Joe Rogan podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy's pretty funny. When he talks about, I don't know if he trains anymore, though.
Joe? I'm pretty sure Joe does.
Does he still train jiu-jitsu? I thought maybe he stopped. He said something the other day, like he's hurt all the time or something. Like,
I'm not certain, but I don't think that he would ever quit. He seems like the guy that he would never let his injuries overcome him,
Hey folks, Craig here, and I'd like to let y'all know we are always looking for writers to contribute to our blog. I don't care if you have any experience or not. 2 or 3 of our contributors had no prior experience writing, and it turns out they have a real knack for it. Our project coordinator helps them put the articles together, and she publishes them on our website and Facebook page, and you will also have the option to come on the show and go more in depth about your article. So if you like what we're doing at The Bad Roman and would like to try your hand at writing, then send us an email at thebadromanpodcast@gmail.com. We're having a blast with this project, and we would love for you to join us in helping promote it. Now back to the show.
Well, speaking of not knowing who you're attacking, my boss at work, he likes to show me jiu-jitsu videos that he comes across on TikTok or on Instagram or something. And he showed me one, this dude, I guess he was just a bodybuilder. And he walked in this jiu-jitsu gym. I thought maybe it was fake, but it doesn't look fake because the dude was bleeding at the end. But he brushed this black belt, just went straight for him. And the guy just pulverized him. And the dude was a big guy. He was a big guy, pretty solid. And then the next thing you know, one of the girls jumps on him. And this girl chokes him out and unconscious. Like, she didn't realize that she choked him out. Like, he was out. And they had to pull her off of him. I'm like, that's another thing too. These girls the ladies that train there too, man, you got to watch yourself with them. They're pretty scrappy themselves too.
Oh yeah. There's a big push for, I think it's due to the transgender thing. How like the guys will go into women's sports and they'll call themselves women.
Right.
And they'll try to dominate these sports. And I think because of that, there's a lot of people on the internet who are pushing back and trying to emphasize the difference between men and women athletes. And so because of that hard pushback, I don't know what the best word is. They ignore that women can be tough almost. But dude, when I started jiu-jitsu, I was 23. I was 205 pounds. And I'm at, you've seen me. I'm pretty muscular. I'm not like I'm a bodybuilder looking, but I'm no slouch. I'm not a obese 205 pounder.
Right.
But dude, a 14-year-old girl was whooping my butt when I'm not even kidding. I remember that girl's face to this day. And her older sister kicked my butt, and her dad kicked my butt. Her dad kicked my butt so bad I felt like he broke my neck, dude. Like, my neck was sore for 2 weeks from just one move that he did. And dude, I got hooked. I was like, I will do everything that I can to make sure. And then there was another guy there too, who was also 14, and he was kicking my butt. He's so fast, getting around, getting on my back and choking me. And I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. They both weighed maximum 140 pounds. They was probably 130. And I had 70, 80 pounds on them. And dude, they were just destroying me. But my point to that is these people on the internet will they'll say things like, if you see like a guy and a girl grappling, they'll say, oh, well, this guy, he wasn't really going all out, or he wasn't really trying. Like, no, bro, trust me. There's some girls in this world that will wear the average dude out. Like, wear them out. One of my best friends, Taylor, she's a blue belt. First time I ever rolled with her, we had I was doing a seminar at Mountain View, and it was like the opening to our Brotherhood Jiu-Jitsu. She came up there and she rolled, and I was like, man, this girl, she did ballet, and I guess that's where she got all her strength from. But we rolled, and I was like, this is the strongest female that I've ever rolled with. Man, I started teaching her jiu-jitsu. She got addicted, started training every day. She would come up on her lunch breaks and train on her lunch breaks. And she started going to tournaments and started winning. And now she's down here. She moved to Memphis to do jiu-jitsu, and she's still killing it, still doing great. But what's crazy is since I met her and moved to Memphis to do jiu-jitsu, I've met several other women that I thought, daggum, this is like the strongest female that I've ever rolled with. And Brooke's another one, dude. I don't know if you ever rolled with Brooke.
No, but I've watched her roll.
But she is unreal. There's nobody on this planet that can convince me that Brooke could not whoop a grown man.
And she's not very big.
No, she's probably 130, 135 maybe.
But it's muscle.
Oh yeah. She's jacked. Dude, her, Taylor, the women at our gym, bro, I promise, man, they would wear the average guy out.
I wouldn't mess with them. I wouldn't mess with any of them, to be honest with you. And I'm joking around, but I told somebody one time, I said, yeah, I just go there so I get beat up by girls and toddlers. It's basically what happens, but it's the same time. It's one of those things, because I'm pretty competitive anyway. When I know that I've been taken over, it's not something that hurts my ego either.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it does not damage my ego to get to where I have to tap out. That's something that was stressed to me in the very beginning. do not be afraid to tap out. Always tap out if you feel like you're in danger.
Right.
And they're very careful there. What I love about it, they're very careful there about making sure everybody's safe.
Yeah.
And not being injured. I told you that one day in one of your classes that Friday morning, I've hurt myself twice during jiu-jitsu, not grappling, but during stretching or during warm-ups. You remember I pulled my hamstring,
Yeah.
just picking my leg up, and I had bruising all the way down to my ankle from it.
Yeah.
And then I had hurt my shoulder when just doing like a tumble, trying to learn that. And I think that's where I'm still having the shoulder issues from. But I mentioned that when we were stretching during the breakfast club. I said the only times I've been hurt in here is whenever during warm-ups. And they're like, yeah, you don't want to go hard during warm-ups.
Yeah, we was doing the Frankenstein kicks, the kicking your, like Soto kicks, kicking your leg up real high in the front, swinging all the way through.
Yeah, and I just think I'm real careful. Like when we do that anymore, when I'm doing that anymore during warm-ups, I'm real careful about it. Like I don't swing my leg up as high as I can. So, I think that's what I did. Like I just picked my leg up and I just did it real quick and I felt pop. I was like, dang, that can't be good. I made it through class, but it was so tight. It was a knot in it. And then, 2 or 3 days later, I had all this bruising and stuff from it. It was every once in a while I can still feel it. It's not that big a deal anymore, but every once in a while I can still feel like, some tightness in that area. But I think it's just reminding me, take it easy.
I was wanting to talk to you about maybe getting some No King But Christ rash guards.
Dude, that would be so awesome.
And I would want to compete, like wear the logo on my rash guard when I competed, or maybe on my gi or something.
Well, somebody messaged me the other day. I don't know where he lives, but he trains jiu-jitsu, and he asked me if it'd be okay to use the Bad Roman brand on his gi, and I was like, absolutely, man. I said, send me a picture when you do it. He goes, I just want to make sure. Before, I don't know if that's what you're talking about, or if you're just talking about like the Jesus, like my tattoo, the Jesus fish with the Anarchy symbol. Or
I like the Bad Roman one. That's pretty cool.
Dude, do it. Have a ball with it. I think that'd be awesome. I actually thought about doing that too. Like if I ever get any better, and if I ever do decide to compete, I don't know if I'm going to get that far into it or not. But if I ever do, I thought about doing something like that with a gi. Get like the Bad Roman logo put on it. I don't know who would do that though. Who would we go to do that?
There's several different ones. Probably Fuji Sports. I got I've been talking to them about doing some rash guards and stuff for Brotherhood in my gym in Arkansas.
That would be totally cool, man. Yeah, let's do that. And I know the guy that listens to the show who messaged me, and if maybe we can hook him up too if he's wanting to do it. That would be awesome. I think that'd be cool to have like some Bad Roman rash guards and gis.
For sure.
I mean, it promotes the project. Hell, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Get the word out about the project. Let's do it. And then I think it'd be cool because to me, just the No King But Christ thing is just, if it sparks a conversation to get us into that point where, what do you mean no king but Christ? That means that I already have a king. I don't need a Donald Trump or Joe Biden or George Bush. I have a king. He's the best king ever.
Right.
Just to get that conversation going with anybody, even if it's just one person, man. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of the hate for anarchism is in the word. I think the philosophy of anarchism, from what I found, the philosophy of anarchism is there's two bad responses that I get. Number one, it's, oh, well, if we had anarchy, people would just run the streets and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, people don't run the streets shooting people because there's laws. People don't run the streets shooting people because they're good people. Like, I don't go out and kill people because it's illegal. I don't kill people because I'm a good person.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to automatically become the Joker if laws are abolished. Even still, it's still wrong to violate someone's life, liberty, and property. Mm-hmm. Like, the backlash against anarchy is usually just what people think anarchy is. In my perspective, anarchy is just choice. It's the ability to choose what you want to do. It's like I said, self-reliance. It's, if I choose to do this, then that's what I'm choosing to do. I'm not forced to do something by another man with the threat of being locked in the cage.
Well, and the word anarchy too, and I agree with you. The word anarchy, it was said to me too, when we were setting up the No King But Christ network, we've got all these different content creators on there. when we were talking to Peter Rowland from Rival Nations. I don't know if you're familiar with that website, but he's got some fantastic stuff about No King But Christ, that he writes. It's his blog, but he goes, I'm not going to say I'm not an anarchist. He said, but the word has been culturally hijacked these days.
Right.
And he's absolutely right. And so I'll use it. I used to use it all the time because it was a buzzword and it would start a conversation. But when you use it, people think one guy's like, so you're just going to go fight the government? I said, no, actually, I just want them to leave me alone.
Right.
That's all I want. I said, but when people hear anarchy, they think Antifa, or they think we're going out there, throwing Molotov cocktails and burning down buildings and stuff. That's not anarchy.
Right.
And it was mentioned one time on the show too. It's in our best interest to get along with one another. And 99% of our lives, we live as anarchists. It's that 1% where the state gets involved,
right,
and they screw it all up. So before I let you go, I want to kind of touch back on the community side of jiu-jitsu and what you see, because like I said, that's one thing I noticed immediately when I first started. The encouragement, when I envision a anarchist society, I envision people working together to help benefit one another and themselves. And that's what I see with jiu-jitsu. Do you agree with that? Is that something you see with jiu-jitsu? Because I saw it immediately, and I don't know, you've been doing it since 2018. I just started last year. I still see that. And I see the brotherhood, the sisterhood, and the community that's involved with all this. And it just reminds me of it makes me think of when I envision an anarchist society, that's what I would see. The encouragement, to help one another, and then encouraging your fellow man and fellow woman to do better, to be better, and to help people succeed. Do you agree with that, or is it just me in my own head?
No, I agree. I agree 100%. So when you initially asked me, what I was thinking your question was, do you think that people that do jiu-jitsu are more likely to be libertarians or anarchists? And my initial response was no, because I don't know many other people who ascribe to anarchist beliefs. But since then, I've started noticing, I've started trying to pay attention, and almost everybody holds to this idea of decentralization. Almost everybody holds to this idea of individualism and self-reliance. And if you talk to almost anybody that goes to the anybody who trains a lot, right, consistently, that jiu-jitsu is a big part of their life, you'll see that most of them are very individualistic. They're very, not to say that they're against community, individualistic in terms of government. They don't need help from other people. They're good. They got their house in order. They're good stewards of the things that they own. They're usually intellectual people. Most people that train jiu-jitsu here, I've found, are very, I don't want to say conservative, because that's kind of got a bad rap over the last few years, but in the traditional sense of the word conservative, they're very socially conservative. They hold a lot of traditional values. I know several people who are even Torah observant people. There's a lot of very traditional people that I've found through jiu-jitsu. Now, you could say that that's because the only people I meet are from jiu-jitsu, but the people who stick it out, the people who come and go, those are different people, all shapes and sizes, all colors, black, white, female, male, whatever. But the people who stick it out are often the ones who desire self-reliance. It's the people who they're intellectual enough to know that they are responsible for themselves. And through that, I've opened up conversations about anarchism, and they're like you said, 99% open to the idea. The only thing that they'll say is, well, if the government's not in control, then somebody else will be controlled, and it's just the next gang to rise up. So they'll respond with that. So they're not completely anarchists, but they're 99% anarchists, I would say. They're mostly libertarian.
What I've noticed too, just in conversations, even without even talking about anarchy to any of them, but just in general conversation about when it comes to stuff. I remember we mentioned Cheyenne earlier. I remember talking to him when I first started. I'm highly claustrophobic, so the idea of being in a position where I can't where I can't breathe. Not necessarily being choked out, but just in close encounter or close quarters. You know what I mean? Like it kind of freaks me out still a little bit. And I was talking to Brooke when I first started, and she said there was somebody that was training there before, and she was claustrophobic as well, but she worked her way out of it through jiu-jitsu. Now she got hurt and missed a year from training. And then when she got back to training, she was claustrophobic again. And I mentioned that to my doctor, but I remember talking to Cheyenne a little bit about it too. And he said, and I said, when the whole mask thing was going on at the time, I said, I couldn't even wear a mask. And I'd get screamed at, especially in Memphis. Memphis was really weird about it. And he goes, well, not to use a 4-letter word, but he said, maybe they should mind their own damn business. And when just in these conversations with them, I think some of these folks are probably anarchists without them knowing that they're anarchists.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Like they don't know how to use the word. Like you and I understand what the word is, but I think I don't know everybody there, but I think a lot of them are probably anarchists without knowing. Just in conversation with Brandon, and like if he sees me post something on Facebook about stuff and just the stuff, his comments, I think that dude's an anarchist, but he doesn't ever say it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like he just in the stuff that he says, I'm like, I think this guy's an anarchist, but I haven't really ever talked to him about it. And if he happens to listen to the show, I'd like to talk to him about it a little bit. So that's one thing I've noticed too with everybody there. I think the vast majority of them probably are anarchists without even knowing that. At least libertarian, they got to get over that hump to anarchy at some point.
We pull them to the dark side.
Yeah, pull them over here to be a bad Roman with us.
Right.
Mandy, you got anything you want to plug? I know you got your gym there in Arkansas. You can tell folks where they can find that and plug Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu as well. Or anything else you want to plug, we can do that and we'll add it to the show notes as well.
So I got a awesome church that I go to, Fountain, Memphis. It's a Pentecostal church in Bartlett. So if anybody needs a home church that's around here, I'd love to have you. I got my Brotherhood Jiu-Jitsu gym in Mountain View, Arkansas. And of course, Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, where I teach and train at. Just to clarify, I should have said this at the beginning probably, but none of my views reflect Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
And as a coach, I got to be careful of things I say, but I wanted to be open here and express everything I believed in. But obviously that's not representative of the GM or other coaches.
Right. No, I think anybody listening will understand that. And when we share this and publish this, and if you share it yourself, we got a lot of mutual friends now, since I started doing this. A lot of the same folks that you're friends with on Facebook, I'm friends as well. So they hear see Tyler Rose come on the show, they might be interested in listening to. So yeah, it's not representative of the gym. It's just something, these are ideas of mine and Tyler's. So, one thing before I let you go, you've invited me to your church. And you told me that day when we first started talking about this, after we got done with class, and you said it's a Pentecostal church. I've been to Pentecostal churches, but I don't know. I'm a little uneasy because I've been to one. I don't know if it was a United Pentecostal church. It was just really strange to me, but I've been to like an Assembly of God church, and it wasn't. I don't know. It's maybe like a Baptist church I'm used to, you know what I'm saying? So there's different flavors of Pentecostalism, but I'd love to come visit, see what y'all are all about. If I ever decide to get back into church, I've been really kind of burned on the idea of church recently. So not that I'm losing my Christianity or my belief, my faith. A lot of the stuff I see in churches with statism, like if I walk into a church and I see a flag on the stage, I'm walking right back out, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So maybe I'll just come visit and we'll go from there. But it'd be kind of cool to get to go to church with somebody I know.
Yeah. Luckily I found a church that does not involve state worship. There are a few people that might get up and speak every now and then, and they'll have some definitely statist things to say. But as a whole,
you're going to get that anywhere though.
Yeah. You're not going to avoid that. But I think that's just due to people's misunderstanding. I think they're just ignorant. I don't think that they're evil, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think and ignorance is not bad. It just means they don't know.
Right. But in the same way that anarchism has it has a meaning to certain people that's completely different to others. Pentecostalism is the same way. So some people might hear Pentecostal and their first image is like Kentucky snake handling churches. and then other people hear Pentecostal and they hear like there's a Pentecostal church in Australia that's real popular. Hillsong. I think Hillsong's Pentecostal. And then other people hear Pentecostal, like me, hear Pentecostal, and it just sounds like home. If you experience lively worship, people participating in worship, and participating when the sermon is being preached, that's pretty much the only difference. Is very active participation.
That's cool. I mean, I can get down with that. I do like Hillsong. I'm familiar with some of their music. They've got some really good stuff. All right, buddy. We've gone a little over an hour now, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. I'm going to try and get this out as soon as possible because I think it's been cool. And I think it's going to be fun for folks who follow the Bad Roman Project, who are involved in jiu-jitsu, to get to hear somebody who's got a pretty good understanding of the art. And I've told folks that I'm going to get you on the show, and they're looking forward to hearing it. So
awesome. I'm glad to be a part.
Yeah, man. Let me know also about that whole rash guard thing and whatever we need to send. If you need something from us, I can talk to our producer. And all right, buddy, I'm going to talk to you soon. And I hope to get to see you soon. I haven't seen you in quite a bit because our schedules are so much different. I've been hitting that very early morning class, but hopefully one of these days we'll run around and you can teach me a few things again.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
All right. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Bad Roman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcasts to never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, it really helps people find us. 100% of donations are given to local charities in Memphis, Tennessee. To learn more about the Bad Roman Project and to find show notes, please visit thebadroman.com.